All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another community conversation. I'm really excited to have Ebony here with us to bless us with her story, with her experiences, with her knowledge and her brilliance. So, before I pass the popcorn over to her to introduce herself, I'd just like to welcome you. If this is your first time rocking with us, feel free to grab a cup of tea, cup of coffee, a notepad, just chill. Like we're gonna have a nice conversation about our experiences, career-wise, community-wise, education-wise, and hopefully that you can get something out of it enough so that you're going in a straighter line and less of a zigzaggy path with whatever you're doing for your education and your future. So my name is Brandon Middleton. I'll moderate some of the conversation here. And again, just honored to have you join us, Ebony. So I'll pass you the popcorn for intro. Tell the people who you are, where you are, what you're up to, maybe the art on the wall. I'm inspired already just looking at what you got behind you.
Wonderful. Well, hello everyone. Thanks so much for making time for me today. I hope you'll need a writing pad if I'm giving some nuggets. I don't know. We'll see. Brandon, thank you so much for inviting me to come on. I am originally from Seattle, Washington, and I kicked off my career as a dancer. Surprise enough, as a modern dancer and hip hop dancer. It's my first passion and will probably always be. And I, kind of had roots in Washington State. Went to New York and danced there, as well as studied at Alvin Ailey and did some choreography. And while I was doing that, I ended up at Goldman Sachs, and that kind of opened up my world of entrepreneurship and tech and what it was to finance. And after taking a couple of steps in a couple of more companies, I landed in investing and just have a passion for investing in Black founders. And so that's where I'm kind of sitting today.
Wow. An unlikely story, right? From dance all the way over to that's like an obvious question that we got to ask and talk about, like what that transition was like. But before I go there, maybe let's rewind a little bit. Tell us like where you grew up, a little bit about the origin story, like what was your neighborhood, what was your family and your community dynamic, what kind of things did you pick up that you were able to take to what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I would say that. Well, first of all, I was raised in a AME environment. That's an African Methodist Episcopal. If you don't know the roots of that organization, as church, it's a religious group, but very Black progress spiritual people. So I was very much encouraged always to think about what Black progress looked like, what were the dynamics looking around me, understanding who my leaders were in the community, people helping each other out, not only just to kind of invest in me from a passion standpoint, but also making sure I had access and opportunity. And so I was pretty gifted in that area with that. I was really blessed with that. But I was raised actually in Spanaway, Washington, which is about 45 minutes from Seattle. And I had an amazing upbringing. It was very diverse. We were right next to an Air Force base. And so it created this kind of mix of culture and community. I mean, we had, mixed backgrounds, various backgrounds. I mean, there's so much diversity where I, grew up, and that really has impacted not only how I see the world, but also kind of the fields that I play in. So, we were having foods of all kinds of cultures, from Black soul food, obviously, got to get a shout out to the grits and the cornbread, to, Asian, cuisines and African cuisines and Spanish cuisines. And there was a lot of mix. So there was a lot of, really mixed cultures, Black and Asian and Spanish and Puerto Rican, and Spanish like Spain and Puerto Rican. And so it was a pretty, I think, great opportunity to kind of expose myself that life can be done several different ways, and not only to accept it, but to celebrate it. So that was a lot of my community.
Beautiful. And then like coming up in the Pacific Northwest, like I've been able to appreciate like California, like West Coast weather, but originally it was Chicago in the winters and the snow and all of that. Maybe talk to us from a little kid. Could you always imagine yourself doing what you're doing right now? Or did you not even have a clue that this kind of thing that you're operating in today was even possible?
I was always reaching, but I would say my parents were very strong. My mom was a nurse. My father was an electrician in the Air Force. So they always came to us with questions around the dinner table. We weren't the kids that didn't get challenged. We were asked to do book reports in the summer. We had those kind of parents. We had a lot of fun, obviously, because I danced, but my parents were very committed to making sure that we understood our education, our history, our Black icons. These were regular conversations going on. So investing was actually something that me and my dad talked about extremely early on. And we would talk about the investments around Microsoft, Boeing, what was right in our backyard. These were kind of everyday conversations. And it's so funny because we used to talk about what stocks we would invest in. And then I would give him a hard time about stocks he didn't invest in. That would have made us all billionaires right now. So, I give him a nudge on that one. But I mean, the conversation was very clear, always about my parents were also, like community entrepreneurship, right? Like my mom had this kind of love and affection for like creating. And so she would make lampshades of all things. It doesn't sound all that interesting, but she made some side business with that. She loved it. She took her passion. A lot of people start paying for it. My father, he launched, took his skills of electrician to building or rather rebuilding refrigerators and reselling those. And so they both had kind of entrepreneurship, gangsta, soft gangsta skills, I should say. And, I think that definitely played a part into all of us with my two other siblings as well.
Yeah, to dovetail on your dad's like work, I just listened to Will Smith's like auto biography
Yep.
type audible book, and he talked about his dad being like in the refrigeration and like HVAC system. Like he did it himself. Like
Yep.
he
Yep.
self-made, got it out the mud, and like that was the work ethic that kind of drove him to be a movie
Yeah.
icon that he is today. And then kind of on that same thread for your mother's side, I see Madam CJ like looking
Right.
down on us, and I'll have to ask you about like the pictures, but like that's a perfect tie-in, like entrepreneur,
Absolutely.
always doing something as the main thing, but then always doing something as a side thing in the next as well.
Absolutely. I love that. The Will book is, I mean, it's great. It is a page turner. I'm a book person, so I actually have the book like literally to my left. So Madam C.J. Walker. COVID was an interesting time. I promise you it'll tie in. COVID was an interesting time. We all had to show up on our Zoom calls. We're all by ourselves in our room, unless we have kids or, generational family homes in which, other people are maybe screaming or doing things in the background. But essentially we show up, kind of isolated. And so, I wanted to show up with some girls, you know what I'm saying? So, so I brought them. So I always get to show up with this history of innovation and brilliance and sophistication. And I'm reminded because, you look at yourself as you're on Zoom. And so I literally get to stare at these pictures. So this is my crew. Madam CJ Walker is, she's obviously the leader of the gang. And I'm in the middle. I spent some time in the AR, VR at Oculus. I was so excited to get, part with the company, which we can talk about later. And then Marie Van Brittan Brown, who in 1969 got a patent for a surveillance security system. And just the brilliance. And she was a nurse actually as well. And so, one of those historical figures where so disappointed that I didn't like try to seek her out to meet her when she was living. I mean, I probably was like 13 years old, but just I'm really inspired by Black female inventors and Black female, go-getters. Just always will be, always have been. We truly understand what it is to turn something into magic. It's just amazing. So I show up with my girls, so that's why you see you see them in the background.
Love to see it. And as somebody that works like at Amazon, who has a subsidiary called Ring that does home security, I guess we owe something to that third picture that you just called out. So that's great to hear. So like, okay, so we heard about like when you were kind of younger and some of the things that shaped you. Take us through like high school, college years, like getting the skills that you needed in order to kind of launch out. Like what was getting out of the house like? What was educating yourself as a young adult and like an early adult like?
I was a pretty lucky kid. A middle-class family, hardworking family, understood what it was, to set an example. So I would say that, junior high, I was that kid that was, I was doing dancing, I was doing cheerleading, I was in band. I was pretty extroverted. So I was always around a group of people. But again, my parents always made sure to challenge our kind of thinking as we were, being raised. My father's that type of guy, he's a, Air Force guy. So he's that type of guy that's challenging you on, maybe somebody said something and they are telling you maybe a lie or a very ambitious, truth or goal. And he would be that person if you'd retell him the story, like, are you sure they said that? Do you think they really mean that? Do you think that's possible? So he kind of crafted my lens into like being very investigative as a kid. And so, from not just an optimistic standpoint, but also kind of embracing a healthy pessimism, if you will, that makes you kind of like look under the hood and unpack what's in front of you. And so from stories to, I guess, subjects, from books, all of that. That's the kind of kid I became. So I was very much into the sciences. I was very much into math, loved math still to this day, and did tons of reading. I was that kid that asked for a math book over the summer from a teacher so that I can like get a jump ahead. Doesn't mean that I was perfect in the class. Let's get that straight. Didn't mean that I get straight A's, but I was a pretty good B and A student. And I would say that I was pretty crafty. So I know that was pretty much influenced by their education in us. My mom was someone, and I just have to give kind of very huge credit to her. She was someone that made sure that Black history was always in our face. And what I mean by that, she would go up to the school and she would put together a display that was just this huge wall display of all these Black historians and creators every Black History Month. And no other mother kind of did that, and our school did not prioritize it. So she really was that for like the entire school. So it was a pretty impactful thing. So I guess that kind of set in me on how to lead. So I was really blessed enough to, be student class president, and head cheerleader, as I got into high school, and just was able to kind of figure out how to lead in a way that thought for myself, but I could embrace others' ideas. And I don't like to necessarily be a dominating individual. I like to really be collaborative. So I like to pull ideas from groups. And that's kind of how, I got from like junior high to high school, graduated from high school, and I knew that I wanted to be close enough to my parents to where they would have to call before coming, but far enough they couldn't just jump in the car and be like, hey, I'm here. So I'm about 45 to 50 minutes away from University of Washington. Huskies was, a great college. I loved everything about it. I love the campus. I love the experience. I love the education. It wasn't, very diverse in the sense of like Black culture, but the Black community was very tight. And there I kind of explored, everything and anything. I lent into kind of a passion of like medicine for the first 2 to 3 years. And as a way to kind of like give my head a break, I went into dancing because I was like, I'm good at dancing. I love it. It's a passion of mine. And it's like therapy, right? Very therapeutic to like go from, biochem and then just, jump into dancing. And so I became really passionate about dancing. And so I started to shift. And before graduating, I almost took a double degree, BA in dancing, the BS in science and biology. And I, spoke with my recruiter advisor at the time. And I was just like, I think that I need one more degree. And I just needed maybe about a year to stay to do that. And she pulled me aside. She was just like, it was, Black woman, love her to this day. Thankful for her. She was like, just get out, get out, go, get in the world. You don't need all the degrees. And I'm so thankful to her because she probably saved me heartache and time. And I probably wouldn't have had like the encouragement and the risk taking to like go to New York and with like $100 in my pocket and try to pursue dance. So, I mean, that's kind of how my journey of how I got into New York.
Yeah, God bless you. And it feels like, my parents, my story was that I loved music and like playing instruments, and a bunch of my homies were like 17 and 18 years old going like on tour to back, R&B acts and like different folks. And I'm like, oh, that's the life. And then my mom, who's an accountant, and like, she's like, those kind of people, might be great in one season, but then if they have a family or if they need to lean on their employer for like some medical insurance or some like life adult stuff, like what's your plan then, Brandon? So I've always had like the kind of business and engineering as the front thing, and then kind of musicianship and the sports is like the back thing. Shout out to everybody that made their kind of their hobby and their passion kind of the main thing. So take us kind of on the plane, leaving the West Coast
Mhm,
and going
mhm.
east, like what was it like to land in a new spot, like New York City that never sleeps? So give us
Right?
like when you got there, how was it?
I mean, well, first of all, let me just say that I had no support. Like my family was so against it. And mind you, my parents are from New York. They're New York born people, not New York City, but Buffalo, New York, like way up in the, upstate. But I had no support. Everybody was like, do not go. It's gonna be horrible. And I was just this person like, so y'all aren't gonna kick me out if I fail, right? That was literally my response to them. And they're like, well, of course not. You can come back home. I'm like, well, I'm good. If I gotta I gotta say it out, I'm good. As long as
Yeah.
I can fail, I can break, be broke. So my dad, like just really begrudgingly, drove me to the airport, and I literally had like $15 in cash and $100 in a check that someone gave me as like encouragement to go after my dream. And he goes, "How much money do you have?" I was like, "I got $15. I'm good." And he was like, "You're going to New York City, and I think that why don't you give me the check? I'll give you $100." And then, like, I mean, he still put me on a plane with $150 in my pocket, so that's hilarious. Looking back and thinking about that, but landing in New York City, it was only my second time literally going to New York City. The first time was like maybe I was there less than 12 hours. And I just had a hustle and energy attitude. It didn't matter really what you threw at me. I was just going to take it on. So you brought up the Will Smith book. I think that he likes to always say like his work ethic is like unmatched, right? I'm kind of one of those individuals where I'm going to get up earlier than you. I'm going to stay later than you. I'm not going to complain about too much. And then I'm always going to look for where the shakeup provides an opportunity so that I can like smoothly move in. So like that's kind of like my attitude of how I go about it. So landing there was just remarkable. It was, I mean, the best time, I will say to my poor husband, it's the best time that I've ever enjoyed. I was single, I was dancing. It was literally just being very selfish, I'm gonna say, that time that you can be super selfish and just give all your time to your passion. You rarely get that time in life. So if whoever's listening to this, if you are thinking about going after something, if you are able to do it and give yourself this selfish moment, it's important to do that, because you won't get it back. It's very difficult. So not to say that, being selfish is something you want to pursue all the time, but there is a need and a time for it. So it was that time in my life that I could be very selfish. So, I did auditions. I was going out to casting calls. That was a time where TikTok and YouTube did not really exist. So there was no self-promotion before you got to the audition, and there was no like, hey, I have this many followers before I go to audition, or even getting, sought after because of a following. This is a time where you're going like a group of cattle into an audition, and I'm going for modern opportunities, hip hop opportunities. So there's not a lot of, Black folks in the room at Modern, much more in the hip hop space. So tons of competition, but it was like a great vibe. So I didn't have a problem. And how I kind of pay the bills, my bread and butter, is that I became an executive assistant. And an executive assistant back in that time, I mean, you could make as much as like somebody with a master's degree. And so it was fantastic. You got kind of access to some of the best, restaurants and venues. I would get, at the time I was at the Hilton Hotel. And so I would get like free tickets to the Yankees. Like Joe Torre at the time was the manager. He'd call and book a room. And I shouldn't say that, but I think I can say that now that he's gone. Would call and book a room, and I would book it for him because I was supporting the DP, and I would get free tickets. It was amazing. It was amazing. You had access to everything. So even though I wasn't making a ton of money, it didn't matter because, you had all these free accesses everywhere. And as time kind of went on, I wanted to go out on my own and try to like completely leave work at the kind of day-to-day job and go dancing. And I did that for probably about a year, and it kicked my butt. I didn't know how to do a couple things. One, budget for kind of the low areas. I only knew how to I knew how to save, but I didn't know how to like budget and like, okay, if I take this one job, it's going to pay me for, 5 months, and then I got to go for another one. I was just kind of like, I'm just going to dance because I love it. And I didn't really think about that piece. So I got back into work pretty quickly, and I ended up at Goldman Sachs, and I kind of fell in love with investing at that point. It was kind of like opening my world, opening my eyes to a very close seat. It was the head of private wealth management at the time that I was working with. And it was just a really interesting experience that I was like, I think I might be leaving dance. I think I also was booking like private planes. And so I was thinking to myself, so most of the dancers, again, before TikTok, where you can make millions of money being a dancer, right? I was thinking the comparison of like, I'm going to book a, private plane for this person that's like, I don't know, 30 years old versus, being a dancer and scraping up pennies to live. So yeah, that was my turning point a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like how, like I only recently like know people that have done the whole PJ private jet thing, and it's like as a kid in Chicago in the South suburbs, you're not exposed to a whole host of experiences and people and opportunity. And as kind of the career progresses, and you see
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a different like there's a club and there's all this stuff. You're like, man, maybe I should learn about that and kind of make my
Right.
way into that. So it's interesting. And why I asked, like when you're a little girl, like did you imagine that you'd be doing
Yeah.
what you, because sometimes you can't know
Yeah.
until you
Yeah.
meet that person or until you like have that experience.
Yep.
So the people that are listening, like, don't treat yourself too badly for not having it all figured out right
No,
now.
absolutely.
You are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Brandon, I love that you actually bring that up. You were absolutely right about that. And even if you knew that it existed, you didn't know how to get there. Like what was the bridge of point A to point B? And it's just so unclear until you see it happen. And you're like, oh, A went to B to C. And it takes a moment. And I would say that to your point, keeping your eyes open and not being hard on yourself. And I think I wasn't really aware of that huge excess of money like that, like so close. So I didn't really beat myself up over it because I wasn't something that I was always, my eyes kind of became open later after I really went after dreams. And so I felt like I was able to kind of digest it and be kind to myself. But I just love what you said, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up because you don't have it figured out. It'll work out, but just be hungry, yeah, to look
Yeah.
for it.
So then like we've gone from kind of the childhood to
Mhm.
the travel across the country to the dancing to the executive assistant. Did you learn about investing during that executive assistant job, or like was going to that next step kind of your first foray into professionally doing it?
So I professionally learned it. So again, remember when I said before, I'm that person looking for that entry. So Goldman Sachs at the time had like these online courses. I was taking every one of those courses at night. I was also the one raising my hand to take anything extra work. So I was getting access to things because I was there later, and you build, comfort and relationship. And so people tend to share more with you, and you get comfortable asking for certain things more. So I kind of pushed into that all the way because I knew that was my opportunity. And that's one thing I would like to say, like, you don't get tons of opportunity. You'll get more than one though. I don't believe in like the one shot. I believe in you taking your shot, but I don't believe in like, you only get one shot. I don't believe in that. I think that you can also create your opportunities, but sometimes, opportunities that are put before you have a special synergy of time, person, and opportunity that feels completely right. And I just encourage the audience, take it, like just take it to try it. Even if you think you're failing, you're not, you're going to build off that. You're going to learn off that. So I just really want to say that. So I took evening classes there. Not trying to pay for it. I saw that they were, you had your Series 6 and all that good stuff. I don't know if I wanted to go into that route because I saw investment bankers sleeping in their desks literally, and stressing out. And this is like around 2007, 2008. So they were stressed. This is the fall of our financial system. And so I wasn't sure that I wanted to go that route. I think that the person I was working for was one of a partnership with an entrepreneurship organization. And so, what he could do with the money. I mean, I was on calls fundraising for Barack Obama. I mean, really super early. So it was like an eye-opening overall experience of what money can do if you can harness and transfer it, right? And so that was something to me that was just so interesting. It more looked like a tool than just grabbing the money. And I learned a lot from watching him and having conversations. Like I said, I ask a lot of questions. And then I would say the other piece is, it piqued my interest and I started to read like crazy. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to kind of VC or investing, or if I wanted to like build my own company. So I was like, let me get close to a founder. And it was at the time where like, tech was starting to get really, really big in New York. I mean, it was there already in Silicon Valley, but New York hadn't really popped yet. Not Silicon Alley hadn't really and so it was starting to shape up. So I started to partner with a business, as a business partner with a CEO and at a startup. And I just learned so much. It was just all operations. It was all tech. It was fast. It was hard. It was painful. It was the best lesson that I could have learned. And after that, it was just like, once you figure out how to solve things with very little resource, to a high degree of execution, you then start to build the confidence you need to kind of know when you can take the risk and make the different kind of steps. So again, at that point, I wasn't totally sure. I spent about 4 or 5 years there. And I was really interested in technology still. And I wanted to kind of get back to the West Coast to spend some time with my family. And I kind of wanted to know what Silicon Valley was all about. So I looked for opportunity there and I landed at Oculus. And it was just a phenomenal experience. It was something I just got super lucky. But I will say this, I did my research and I made sure that they would pick me to be hired. I made it very difficult for them not to hire me, in the sense that I wanted to understand the product. I like read everything I could get my hands on. And I'm not like necessarily a technologist trained, right? So I had to do that extra work and I did that. And I just started working really hard for a very long time.
Got it.
Yeah.
And like Facebook there's so many stories of success out here in Silicon Valley around Facebook and Meta now.
Yeah.
Was Oculus kind of its own separate thing, kind of outside of Facebook? Did you feel like integrated? Like take people into the world of.
Oh man, ooh, NDA. Where's the NDA?
Yeah, even people that don't know about AR, VR, like people see all of this stuff about metaverse, all this stuff about these alternate experiences. Give the 101 primer, like this is what it's all about.
Well, I'll say this. It is very fun to see Meta come out of the way that it did and get its just reward. That's a word that we used super early. Like we're talking like 7 years ago. So it was just so funny when the name got renamed. I will say this. It was at a time where, Facebook was going on a lot of purchase, and I got brought in like maybe about 2 months after the purchase. So it was super soon. And it was even at a time where they weren't sure if everybody was going to move down to Menlo Park or if they were going to stay in Irvine. I was, of course, like hoping Irvine because the weather's a little bit more better than Menlo Park, but I'm good. I was flexible. So it was a very small company in the beginning. I was brought in, and maybe at that point that we were at 100. And I mean, like I knew almost everyone because I was one of the first to be the kind of person you touched, whether that would be the executives or the engineers. And I would say that the team started to hire very like just well-talented human beings. I mean, you would see a cross between someone that can do just amazing graphic technical work, but also can have like the compassion to understand what it is to bring in a narrative into, a storytelling within a headset. I mean, it was insane kind of the intersections that space brings in. But as far as like the culture, we felt very different than Facebook for a while, at least for the first 2 years. And I think that's, like to any kind of experience that gets acquired by a large company. You feel like yourself for a while, but you only got this like huge cash infusion boost. And then over time, the company's going to start, kind of entwining you into, their systems and their processes. So I would say that it became like this other world. A lot of people were really interested in what we were doing. Facebook definitely had an open culture, and that was great. But a lot of the things that Oculus was doing wanted to be open, but they had to really have kind of some closed conversations. It was hardware, it was software, and probably, one of the largest acquisitions that, Facebook made for hardware specifically. And hardware is really tough. I mean, we would have, headsets and there would be only like 4 or 5. And so you were protecting them, with your life a little bit. I mean, it was really a special time because it was so unique what you were creating. And the last thing I'll say this before my NDA gets shut down here, is that, we got a chance to welcome a lot of new faces into the space of Oculus. That was all kinds of people interested in working in a space that was just at an intersection between what it was to connect people, what it was to bring the world to your feet. And I will give Oculus so much credit at wanting to make sure that this emerging technology was going to at least be in the hands of more diverse communities. And that's kind of where I saw my opportunity, and kind of grabbed every opportunity to make sure that there was narratives of all backgrounds being told, narratives that were much more reflective of representation from all backgrounds, genders, you know what I mean? It was something that we were very focused on. So we did that from the beginning, from like day one, once they were purchased by Facebook. So I have to give them so much credit for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we've come a long way actually from kind of the fall of the economy to like right now. You've seen like the rise of creators. So like influencers and people who have entire businesses that didn't exist and couldn't exist up until now, and kind of the opportunity to kind of be a content creator or influencer in a real space or a virtual space. It seems like that's where we're heading, and it's pretty cool to think about. I'm not sure I understand all of the things exactly, but different than what your mom and dad were used to, and even you and me, like we grew up in a different environment than what's currently being born right now.
Right. I mean, I'm someone that's like, shouldn't we be driving in cars in the air right now? Like I'm gravely disappointed in this promise that technology was supposed to be flying cars. Like that was me. Like I was, one thing I didn't mention earlier, I was very much a Trekkie. I was watching Star Trek with my father all the time. We were going to Star Wars. So the promise of the future and technology and the possibilities was always something that was just so exciting. And it becomes really interesting to see the authenticity is not the word for it. The accessibility meet human nature, if I can say that. I think that's the part, because when you're saying like, I'm not sure if like the metaverse and understanding like Web3 and all that, like what that really is going to be able to tell. I think it's going to look a lot more human than we all speculated back in the 80s and the 70s. And to be honest with you, no one has the complete script on that one baked out yet. It's going to be decades before we really get hit to what to experience it. I mean, if we think about even apps, like, I mean, I think everybody uses this kind of example. And the first couple of apps, they weren't really that amazing, right? It took at least like 15, 20 years for apps to really impact our lives in a way where like, I live and die by my phone. So it's going to take a while before that. I'm just excited that everybody's at least still focused on it because it's a hard technology to solve. So it's exciting to see everybody kind of going back at it.
Yeah, shout out to the Jetsons. I heard you mention flying cars, to Jean-Luc Picard, LeVar Burton, like all of the Star Trek characters. Right? Just let me go on record and say I appreciated that, and I'm also a little sad that we don't have flying cars yet. So then, like, take us from after Oculus and like into directly investing in underrepresented companies. Like, talk about that leap. And for folks that may be listening or watching this that don't have a clue, like what it is to hear pitches, what it is to be at, I'm not sure which stage you're at, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, like talk about kind of the life of an investor in your seat right now.
Absolutely. So it's a nice arc, actually. So while I was at Oculus, we were really trying to be very innovative about how we push the conversation forward with diversity, specifically with VR tech and inclusion. And so, bringing that lens all the way through. So I got a chance to actually run a $10 million fund that would invest in creators that were building VR. And then I also got a chance to kind of lead an accelerator for 3 years. That was absolutely remarkable and kind of gave me the kind of chops that I work with now. So I was able to kind of build the programming, select individuals to come, and then give them money to come out, give them tech, give them the community and the resources, which is extremely gratifying because some of those successes are like completely going full force today. One has raised, Ramen VR raised like $10 million. Shout out y'all doing great. And then I got to work with, Seek VR. I mean, I think now Mary's being called like the godmother of VR. She's just completely amazing. So I got a chance to really get my feet wet, and a lot of the creators were very gracious to welcome me because I don't have a gaming background. And a lot of folks coming into VR in the beginning were, very, very hard gamers. So they were kind to me to embrace. And so while I was there, I was able to kind of understand what it was to look at pitches, sharing your ideas from a, basic level and your vision, and really just how not really just how you're going to make money from it, although that's a huge part of it, but what your vision is long term, and trying to get someone to believe in you and go all the distance from that first creation or manufacturing of your idea all the way through to execution and then like releasing into the world. and then adopting, right? So I would say that, from a practical side, I got my chops at Oculus to practice out, but we weren't able to go as far as I wanted with in a particular demographic. Let's be honest, Black women just don't get enough money, and so I couldn't take that. So I was like, well, I'm going to start my own angel fund. So I started my own angel fund, and I was pitching other Black women, and it was kind of like Black women for Black women kind of approach. And we saw some really great, companies. It was my opportunity to understand what it was to kind of assess a business plan, understand a founder's goals, their abilities, maybe areas where they want to improve, how they are able to recruit a team, how you're able to source, manufacture, and then, launch your go-to-market strategy. And so I kind of fine-tuned what I didn't learn at Oculus there. And at that point, I kind of went full force because I just completely fell in love with it. So I decided to build my kind of ecosystem of mentors and board of directors, my personal board of directors, as you kind of say. So I got mentors that were in the space. I kind of like elbowed my way into programs like First Round Capital, which is completely an amazing community of folks in the Bay Area that are angels and share deal flow, and they're very encouraging and supportive. And so like it was a great environment to make mistakes if you did, but also to ask a lot of hard questions. And people were just able to share information, which is probably the best part of the job that I just love the most. And then the second part is like the technology. I'm just a tech head. If I were to show you a view of this room, my office, you'd see like 5 headsets, and you would see like, Leicas and a drone. I'm just completely, all teched out. So it was a great opportunity of like, getting my first early works of looking at deals with the fund at Oculus and going to Angel Fund. And then now I am at a fund, a seed stage fund that is investing in Black founders specifically. We feel very confident and have high conviction that Black founders just don't get enough of the money that are out there in the ecosystem. It's like Black women, I think, get a percentage of 1%. And I think Black founders, because Black men get a little bit more, but we're all in the same bucket. So this is not a divisive thing, but just to give you the data on it, is like 2%. So I think that we have beyond the brilliance and almost like a backlog of brilliant founders, inventors, entrepreneurs that have been waiting, to get the money in a way. And if they're not waiting, they found a brilliant way, similar to like your background and my background of our parents figuring it out of how to, find the resources. Friends and family rounds isn't something that's really accessible to most Black people and brown people. So we wanted to kind of come in there and solve that problem, and then provide like, a great home for entrepreneurs to actually come into. So we are actually category agnostic. We are interested in a lot of emerging techs like prop techs, ed tech, AR, VR, Web3, crypto, blockchain, but also, we'd be interested in some really interesting marketplaces as well. We hope that, this fund will be a very big success. The target goal is 35 million. And then, we can go on to raise even bigger funds to keep working at this. So it's been like a pretty big honor to now have this moment of working with founders, and the team that I have has been fantastic.
Sounds super exciting. And like, I'm going to have to steal backlog of brilliance. That's something that I am taking and using moving forward. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Maybe the next piece, let's do like a quick lightning round of like different quick hitters to give folks a continued sense of kind of what you're into. Absolutely. I know that we're locked down in terms of COVID right now. Like maybe we'll start with travel, like name 3 places or so that are on your bucket list that you've either never been before and you want to go to, or that they were so amazing the first time you went that you can't wait to get back to.
Okay, that's a hard one. I'm a huge traveler. I love travel. It is, oh gosh, there's nothing like it, just nothing like it. So I'll say that, so I've been pretty blessed and lucky to go to some of the most extravagant places. I'll say that Seychelles was one that was absolutely fantastic. So the Maldives is the next that is on that bucket list. I would say India, I have not been. We just kind of flew through Sri Lanka, which is, not far, but, but India is definitely one, just the brilliance that I see there, the tech that I see there, the population, that the large, just the mass, I want to kind of, check that out. And then Vietnam is on my list. So those are the 3. That's pretty huge for me that I want to go to. My husband's, from France. So we end up like kind of bundling a trip close by. So I think the next one will be Tanzania, and then those three following.
Okay, so you mentioned France, so now my mind is going more to food than it was going to the other thing. So let's talk about three like cuisines, or let's just talk food for a second. Give some people some ideas about what you love to eat.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So, oh man, I'm an eater. And unfortunately, COVID has encouraged him that passion all the way. That's what my Peloton says. So I would say, so my number one favorite food, it is soul food. I mean, there's nothing like a plate of soul food. Now, the reality, I do not eat all of it because I have not figured out how to cut down fats. It's just how we made it as a historic, cuisine. That's how we've developed it. So I will say the vegetables of soul food is what I really cling to. So that's number one. Number two is Italian is gonna get me at every moment. I just, been to Italy, and it was just like I just wanted to like dive into all the food. I'm a food person all the way. So like I won't be able to split Mexican food and like say for instance, Chinese food. Maybe that one's not even fair enough. And specifically like Cantonese. What's the Mexican Cantonese? And what's the other one? I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. That's pretty much it for me. Those are my favorite. Absolutely. Yeah. You can give me a plate of anything of those within those areas. It would be great. Oh no. Okay. So Puerto Rican. So like black beans and yellow rice and maduras, that's got to be the dish that like, if you got me on an island somewhere, just send that on out in a boat and I'll be eating it and I'll be happy. I'll be absolutely happy.
Everybody listening, everybody watching, like you've heard a plethora. So like go delight your palates. The question I was gonna go to before I found out about the France thing was the music playlist. So like let's talk music for a while. Tell me what you've been listening to lately, or like greatest albums of all. You can go wherever you want to go.
So greatest album of all time, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Yep. So I mean, if you can't tell right now, like Black Girl Magic is what I'm always gonna ride with. But it's just brilliant, and it's just that you could take that album in several different genres, and it would just be a masterpiece. So I'm gonna, Lauren's never gonna give me another album. I already know, so I've put that to bed. But that is one of the best of all time. I'm a West Coast girl, so Tupac, just about anything he makes is good, right? Like that's just it. I would say lately, and before COVID, but I think COVID has really opened up this genre, Afrobeats. Afrobeat. It's interesting because I think it was Alicia Keys, I want to say, that had a Afrobeats show on Broadway back in like 2007 or 8, I want to say. And a lot of people liked it, but they didn't really rock with it. It is really the genre, like what has been happening in the space and propelling this genre out, because everybody's been on TikTok. So I'd have to probably give credit to TikTok a little bit for like amplifying it out. I would say that that's probably what I vibe to right now more than anything else. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been cool to follow like so Alicia and Swiss Beats are married, and to see their art. Have you seen their art collection that they've amassed? It is pretty cool.
It's incredible.
It's into kind of Afrofuturism and Black art. Like looking forward, there's another cool thing to double click into for anybody that's
100%. Yeah.
So let's see. Maybe the last lightning round question I could ask. Let's take books and podcasts and like resources to educate yourself. Like talk to me. We talked about Will Smith a little bit, but like talk to me about other places that you go to like get smart.
Okay. So I'm a person of always left and right brain. So making sure we have an EQ just as much as an IQ, and balancing that as much as possible. And I probably would say at the end of the day, I'd like a little bit more of the EQ. So right now I'm reading Tarana Burke. It's heavy material because she's the author of the Me Too hashtag and has been working endlessly about, sexual abuse, specifically for women of color. So that book has been fantastic. I have to give her a shout out. Will Smith, as you said before. I would say that books around business is probably the ones that I go to the most. I'm actually reading Founders at Work. I'm forgetting her first name, but Livingston, who was a co-founder of Y Combinator. So I'm always like going between both at the same time. Podcasts. Oh man, this is gonna embarrass me, but there's two podcasts that I'm a diehard to. One is called The Read, and it's so good, but it is edgy. Let's just say that. But brilliant edginess. And then the other is How I Built This. And How I Built This is, it unpacks the stories of great, entrepreneurs and stories. And it's just been really fun. I would say from an entrepreneur standpoint right now, the founder of, it's an amazing story, Uncle Nearest, Weaver. Have you heard that story yet of that story? That there was this article in New York Times, and essentially it gives credit to, oh my gosh, it's the whiskey. It's the most famous whiskey that we all talk about.
Jim Beam?
Which one?
Jim Beam?
It's not Jimmy Bean, it's the other one. It's the only other one. Anyways, it's not Jimmy Bean though. Anyways, this is so bad. I feel so bad. But anyways, Uncle Nearest is the actual person that taught the most known beer how to make whiskey. And so she went back and really did this, history, a lesson, and has created this whiskey. It's won several different awards, and it's just given, I think there's a scholarship now with it, or like some venture with it, but you got to check it out. It's absolutely just amazing. But she figured this out after reading an article and just made history. And I think that kind of brilliance, like I said before, Black girl magic, man. That kind of brilliance is just remarkable. I mean, to read something and then not only create a business about it, but then give credit to where credit's due, and like make sure that history is told in its complete self. So I'm so sorry, I'm like flipping on the name. I'm gonna remember it before I go.
Jack Daniels,
maybe? There we go, Jack Daniels.
Okay.
So he actually taught Jack Daniels. Like it is a remarkable story. So it's just, it's just one that is just so encouraging. So I would say anything that she does, I'm usually like tuned into it. And then let's see, lately from a wellness perspective, I have definitely been doing a lot of meditation and reading, and just every morning I now start with just quiet time for like 10 to 15 minutes. I found that this moment in quarantine has really kind of put a focus on like where you can lose it, if that makes sense, right? Lose everything, like a little bit of yourself, or a little bit of weight, or indulge overly. And for some people, it probably was a really good thing. I don't want to dismiss the fact that it can be a very pleasurable thing, but I think for others, it can also kind of call out the areas where you haven't been focusing. And if you kind of overindulge in those areas, it, kind of puts you off balance. So, so from a wellness standpoint, I've started to prioritize that a little bit more.
That's awesome. And we come full circle from like little Ebony all the way through like all the experiences and all the things and all the preferences. So like, it's been fantastic to kind of get to know you, and to kind of get to know your story, and to make visible the kinds of things that are possible when you've got a good community, you've got a good support system, when you've got the work ethic and the drive to like try things out and make it happen. And to I know that you couldn't have seen kind of all of the goodness and everything that you're doing right now from way, way back. So to our point about just put one foot in front of the other, like be graceful and kind to yourself, and try to network and build community as much as you can. And there's good stuff awaiting.
That's absolutely. Can I double down on that comment that you just said? In the last time that we have, I was on a virtual call, not a call, but like a webinar or whatever. Jerome Sapp, who is the founder of Rare's app, was on, and his last kind of closing statement was just so powerfully like sweet. It was just really kind. It basically was a message of like, don't give up on your dreams and what you see as an opportunity. You may not know how to get from A, B, and C, but just please like go focus on it. Just don't give up. Just make sure you hold it and you protect how you want to be persistent at something. So I'd love to just kind of like borrow his, momentum and his inspiration for that, and just say to everybody here that just be persistent about whatever idea you have, or whatever goal you have.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon, so much. I really appreciate your thoughtful questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Always, it's a pleasure.
Your time and brilliance with us. And then just like she's stealing, I'm stealing from her too, y'all. Like we're taking each other's quotes and doing the best and we can do as we move forward here. So to everybody listening and learning along with us, thank you for rocking with us for this hour. And be on the lookout for Ebony. Like she's coming for y'all. She's gonna do much bigger and better things on into the future. So have a good rest of the afternoon and the week, and we'll talk to you soon, Ebony. Thank you.
Thank you.